Maybe it's mental illness. Maybe it's Maybelline. Maybe it's the Illest Podcast.
And we're back. We're here.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Welcome back to the Illest Podcast.
The Illest Podcast, the sickest podcast there is, I think, metrically.
I've heard that.
just heard, so I've never heard of the term illest as being like, oh, that's sick. You
Really?
know?
Are you from
No,
California?
I'm from here. That's
How?
why.
It's okay. I'm clearly the one in touch with the popular cultures and vernacular.
Clearly.
Yeah.
But it's in a Fergie song.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I performed at Club Triangle on Saturday, and I did MILF Money
Yeah.
because
yeah.
that's
Because,
hilarious.
of course,
And she says illest in there.
she does.
And you're like, now I get it.
And I was
That
like, oh, I've never known what she said. Oh, well, I've heard her say illest, but I didn't understand what that meant. Now I do. And this is what we're all about,
yes,
education.
This the Illest Podcast, the Fergie Appreciation Podcast.
Yeah.
Hosted in part by myself, Keyman Harder. That is my name. I did not choose it. It was given to me on my birthday.
You literally just stole my joke.
But
We
my
had to
name is
re-record
Keyman
this
Harder.
intro, and then you just took my joke.
That's comedy for
I was
you.
going to say that is a respected comedian.
Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
not even offended.
That's how you know he's a pro.
Absolutely. He steals other people's jokes. My name is Aydan Ash, and that is also my name, but I chose it.
Yeah, that's much better of a
Yeah.
decision. I think that, like, you know, there's a lot of like hardship put on, you know, a lot of the queer and trans community, and I don't want to diminish that, but the ability to just like go and mulligan your name, I think that is fucking great, and
Well,
that's when I think everyone, like, when you
It is
turn
pretty
18,
legit,
you should
yeah.
be able to be like, hey, so now that you're an adult, you've been around here a little while, what's your fucking name?
But
Let's
that's the
just-
beauty
Yeah.
of life, my dude. Anyone can
I was gonna
choose
say,
that.
that's not
Anyone
just-
can be whoever they
It's-
want to be.
Everyone has access to that option, but it's just mostly utilized by the trans community because
Because often the trans community has no other choice.
exactly. Like our society is so gendered that if you're a quote unquote boy, you have a boy's name. I mean, my name was Josh, which isn't a bad name, but it's not. It doesn't
not your
represent
name,
who I
clearly.
am. Yeah,
I
exactly.
don't have a boy's name. I have an adult's name. Man,
You should-
that's not
You have a
for boy.
stripper name. Your name is Keyman Harder. You
true.
have a stripper name.
I can't be a stripper because of that name, because I can't think of a like more suggestive name.
I think
like if I came up like
I think
Lance
that is
Steele,
why you
Lance
should-
Steele would be like a good stripper name, and I can't do that because it's less suggestive than Key Man Harder. Like straight
I
up.
Ooh, it is.
think you absolutely should be a stripper, but only in a gay club because I don't
Because
think
you'd make
Because
a
those are the
million
kinds
because you
freaking
would
dollars.
exactly
Yeah.
because you would literally get more tips. You would get more tips than the income of the bar.
It's true.
You absolutely would. We should probably introduce the other
Oh, yeah,
person that's
there's-
randomly talking in our
There
podcast.
is another person
There's
here,
another
but
person.
it's
This is
fine.
a-
I'm
this
basically
is-
like furniture.
I'm
I'm
not
used
just
to it.
throwing
It's
my voice.
No, it's cool. Actually, I didn't choose my name either, but I am the Chyna Leigh. And
You didn't choose that name?
I did not. My
That's-
mom is a weirdo and an amazing person.
Samesies.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was a punk and new waver in the 80s in LA.
That's so cool.
And she was a 21-year-old single new mom by herself and went in with a hot pink mohawk to have me and took one look at me and decided that my name was Chyna.
That's
That-
kind of cool.
Yeah.
That is actually
The,
pretty
the
like
reason I changed my name was one because it's not a feminine name. I didn't necessarily dislike it anyway or feel offended by it, but the name my first name was Joshua, which is basically just the evil. That was unintentional. The English equivalent of Jesus.
I guess the evil equivalent. Sure,
The-
sure.
yeah. And then my middle name was Andrew, which is derived from andro, which literally means man. So my name was Jesus Man.
You were Christ guy.
I was.
You were Christ guy. That's
Oh man,
I was.
that's
that
the
was
worst superhero.
yeah.
Jesus Man.
Jesus. It sounds like a really bad Christian like kids series, like
Oh,
Jesus Man
Jesus
here to
guy.
save the day.
Oh my
Jesus
god.
Man. Yeah.
I don't
So,
know. I'd
obviously-
get high and watch that.
What?
I'd get baked and watch that. I'm not. Gonna
Oh,
lie.
absolutely. But only for entertainment, like comedic purposes.
I mean, well, yeah, not for
there
like,
actually
education.
is. This is
when
how
a
deep
mild-mannered
into it.
youth pastor lost his way
Oh my god.
and read
of course
the
he's
first
a youth
Bible.
pastor. Oh,
The
He
first
became
episode.
Jesus Man.
The first episode would absolutely be about Jesus Man saving someone from the evil monster of
Oh, well,
homosexuality.
yeah.
You know, the worst thing to start out with the big. But there is actually a children's superhero show called The Bible Guy, I think, or The Bible.
We're
The scripture.
doomed.
But,
Yeah.
We are absolutely doomed.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we're just going to get high and watch that. So we're going to, like, if you just hear like TV in the background for the next I assume 90 minutes.
Yeah,
like that.
totally.
90 minutes of this podcast of just some bubbling sounds.
Or if our next podcast is just exactly like bubbling sounds for the first 5
Laughing.
minutes, or me opening bottles because I can't smoke.
I also can't because of the whole compromised immune system.
Oh,
Yep,
fun.
exactly same.
Well,
I
it's
can't because
okay.
it gives
I
me
will
anxiety.
smoke enough for both of you.
Yeah, so
Yes,
it'll just
please
be
do. I'll drink wine,
Chyna
which isn't
getting
much better when you
fucked
have.
up.
Yeah, I don't drink, so it's
Oh, really?
it's a perfect balance.
Exactly.
Actually, we
Yeah, totally.
we complement each other very well.
And then watch. We could watch that. We could also watch Veggie Tales and also
Yes.
Salty the Songbook.
Oh,
I bet
wow.
that's reaching real deep.
Whoa.
Yeah, started
Jeez.
out as a cassette series.
I feel like this is a confession.
I know. I
that
should
is
probably
a-
stop talking.
that is-
I'm
Well,
gonna
it would make sense us being in confessional with Jesus Man over here.
Yeah,
This,
that should be my drag name.
Oh my
Jesus Man,
God,
and just
that
come
would be
out
hilarious.
like a white Medea, but which would
I mean,
be as awesome.
the first thing you'd have to do is get rid of all fashion sense.
Well, I was
which
going to
is
say the
kind-
Holy Spirit, your clothes just can't contain the
Yeah.
Holy Spirit inside you, so you just need to remove them immediately.
So part of my act would have to be like all of my costume being attached to fishing line and people off stage. So
Yes.
whenever I do something, they just whoosh,
fly off.
rip
your
it off.
body.
Yeah.
Yes, lots of fishing wire and Velcro.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, this is gonna be funny. Actually, I think I like this one. Anyways, that's
we here
not what
for
we're
again?
gonna talk
What are we
about.
This will be the first good podcast we ever record.
The one where
And-
we talk about religion and also
Yeah.
make fun of it. Yeah.
Well, sure.
Well, so I want to talk a little bit about yourself. I mean, the Weird Name Club. I really dig that.
Yep.
I always
you've
thought
gotten
that-
to join that.
Yeah.
Now.
I thought exactly.
I thought the reason you changed your name might have something to do with the fact that no one would ever be able to find you on Facebook with Josh.
I know. Exactly. What's your name, Josh?
You and
okay,
everybody
that narrows
else.
it down. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't have that problem. I've only ever met a couple other people named Chyna in my life. People ask me a lot if I'm named after the wrestler, and I like to say that she's actually named after me because I was born before she changed her name.
Absolutely.
Also, mine only has one N, so it's obviously streamlined and superior, but that's just...
That's why Ki, very efficient name.
Yes,
it's good.
efficient. I like
Is your name? I've been wanting to ask you this for a while. Is your name derived from a specific culture or anything, or is it just this is cool?
My name is Japanese for life energy. If you've ever watched Dragon Ball Z, you've heard my name said a lot.
I
or
actually
if-
haven't.
It's
Oh.
it's
I want
it's
to.
a variation
Yeah,
of
it's-
chi, isn't it?
Yeah, chi is Chinese for the same. So chi would be more from you.
That is some
from-
weeb shit right there.
And
I don't feel so bad about Salty
the
the
only
Songbook now.
reason
Right.
that I would ever play a monk in D&D is that I could use my own power, because I'm a fucking geek.
Oh my
It's,
god.
Those of you that get it out there are fucking having the time of your lives, while everyone else is like, okay.
That
Right, there's
they
the
are
there's
disturbed.
the
yeah.
Tai Chi enthusiasts and the D&D nerds are for some reason like a mixed
Coming
demographic
together.
and getting this joke. It's
You've
very
literally
weird.
just given permission to two very different communities to come together and do
connect.
what they both
It's a
actually want
beautiful
to do.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is kind of roll their eyes at me.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, that's
Basically, that's what I was. That's I don't know what you were
Comedy.
thinking, but that's what I meant. Yeah. So you're not the one being interviewed, but I'm just remembering all of these
Apparently
questions.
I am now.
Is Japanese part of your heritage?
No, I am very white.
Okay.
But the thing is,
well, that's
like,
how I was trying to nicely say.
the thing is,
are you not
like,
as white as
my,
you look?
My dad was like really into like Japanese culture. He was taking these like religions of the world classes.
Oh wow,
and
it
stuff
is
and culture.
actually literally weeb shit. That's
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah, no, it is.
So
But
basically,
the thing
your
is, like,
name is racist.
yeah,
Is what you're saying.
well, in my defense, so like.
Appreciation, not
So, the thing
appropriation.
is, like,
Okay.
I was given this name like when I was born. Like this is
Yeah.
like when I was like 3 months old. or
Not
whatever,
you're
like,
not racist.
Yeah, no, like
but
I was given this name. It was like taken from another culture, stripped of all of its original context, and given to me. And now I've like had it for way too long. That would just be like awkward and impractical for me to give it back, which kind of makes it the whitest name there is if you think about it.
100%.
That's a fair assessment.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
Actually-
But we took this from you so long ago. It would be weird for us to give it back.
It's true.
Yeah.
And on the other side of that coin, like you would be amazed at how often people ask me if I'm Chinese. I swear to
Just
God.
because of your
'Kay,
name?
Firstly, I know y'all can only hear my voice, but I'm super not Chinese.
I was
No.
wonder. I wonder that too. I'm like, I wonder how often they get
Like,
asked,
oh, yeah.
like, oh, are you Chinese?
Yeah.
Just because your name is China.
Yes, I'm Chinese and my mom is super uncreative. Like
Yeah.
what? Kind of.
She was not
insane question is
creative
that?
and very, 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 very loyal.
I mean-
and like, like.
Or lazy. I don't
Yeah.
know. Some that no,
That's-
I'm not Chinese.
I mean, I'm planning on naming my daughter America.
Sure.
You know,
I mean,
after the lead actress of Superstore, it's a really good, like,
Yeah.
Yeah,
underrated
it's a good show, yeah.
Obviously, that's the.
That's what everyone's going to assume.
Yeah.
naturally.
That is really it's
No,
only if their
yeah.
name, only if their middle name is the and their last name is beautiful.
That's true.
Then their name could be America the Beautiful.
Aw,
I mean,
that's
I need
nice.
to marry someone
No,
named.
it's not
No.
nice at
named
all. That was
beautiful.
not the point of what I was saying.
It's
So
nice
trying
in
to-
quotes.
Yeah,
Get us
we
back
should
on-
talk about
Oh, yeah,
what we're actually
right.
here to
Like,
talk about, which is
What do you
chronic
mean? We're not
illness.
just here to hang out? That's
Well, I
right.
mean, like, mine kind of is because, like, my name is Key, so whenever, like, I'm at a hospital and someone that doesn't already recognize me, which, like, half the people at UCSF do by
Sure,
now,
sure.
but, like, whenever
Yeah.
they read Key, they're always just, like, out looking for someone who's just not the whitest guy there is. So,
Fair
like,
enough.
You? Oh no, of course you're not.
Yeah, no.
No, you're definitely Josh. For sure.
Bringing it back.
Ironically.
But
how
yeah,
many
it-
people pronounce it Kai though? Because that's what I thought it was.
Everyone.
Everyone.
You think people can't read? I've realized. Like, not that there's anything wrong necessarily with not being able to read, but like seriously, you'd be stunned at how often I get coffee and people call me Chyna or Cheyenne. I swear to God.
That's funny.
What?
Just throwing
That's
some
not-
vowels in there.
That's like 4 extra letters.
Well,
what
and
the hell?
well, and it's not like your name sounds like either one of those either.
No,
they
it's
just
spelled like it
so they
sounds.
literally just assume that can't be your
That can't
name.
be a name.
So
That's not
they-
a thing.
So at my work, I still do not have a nameplate. I work like at a bank-like institution, and I still don't have a nameplate because the
So basically a
nameplate
bank.
company.
He's a loan shark. No.
The nameplate company.
Bail bonds. He works at bail bonds. A bank-like institution.
I don't know like what I'm allowed to say.
I know.
Like I don't know how
But
like
I'm glad you
confidential
don't know,
things-
so that we can make fun of it.
But like the nameplate company got the order for Key K-I, and they're just like, this is wrong. Hey guys, you submitted an order incorrectly. You just put this weird 2-letter name. Please give us the actual name so we can make his nameplate.
Now
First
that
of
is
all,
racist.
Yeah,
That
yes,
is racist
yes,
as
it
hell.
absolutely. This,
Oh my
you
God.
work at a bank in a small town in California. There's
my
no
God.
way.
Or even
You're not
a
anything
step
but
beyond
white.
that.
This name
like
is wrong.
that's not a name.
Yeah, that's not a name. Yeah.
Well, I have a coworker who they misspelt it because he has a weird name. Like, you know, I'll say my coworker's name on blast, but like Sumner, which is Sumner, and they were like, oh, clearly they mean summer. So we're just going to give.
Okay,
We're
I
just
mean-
going to send the summer nameplate because we don't want to end up misspelling it.
See, that's a funny one because it is both. It sounds like it's spelled. It's exactly like it's
Yeah.
phonetic. But I can see how an English speaker would be like, oh, that's definitely a typo. for
Also,
sure.
also, why would you run a business like that and then just make assumptions when there's things like, oh, I don't know, phone calls and emails?
I don't know.
Just send it, like,
Just ask.
just
Is
confirming
this
the
a typo?
information you sent us. Put the name down, and then they can say, yep, that is correct. And then you print it like we paid you to do.
And also, worst case scenario, you send them one that's spelt wrong because they made a typo. Worst case scenario, you're like, well, make sure to go send us better orders in
Yeah.
the future. Like that's
Like they send it to us and it was a typo and it's their fault, so they have to buy another one. So you make more money. Just do what the people ask for.
And here's the other thing. I don't want to harp on this much longer, but like, okay, I'm sure that this happens to you when you go out and like get a table at a restaurant, right? Or like,
Yeah.
I don't know, place a to-go order and you're with a group and they ask for a name for the order. Do you like step behind other people so that they won't look at you for the name?
Susan,
I do
this
that
is yours.
all
This
the
is
time.
all on you,
I'm like,
Susan.
I've started doing a thing where whenever I say my name, I put my fist kind of forward and turn it
Oh, no!
clockwise and
Oh,
back
God,
as
you
if
make
I
a
were
key
using a key
mime.
to
Oh,
open
no.
a door.
Do you really
pantomime
do that?
Yes, I do that
That's
all the time.
funny.
It's
That's
not even like
amazing.
intentional at this point. It's just part of
This
my
is what-
name
this is how you
is
explain it.
pantomime. Just to
Yeah.
be like, it's key, like the household
key.
object.
But at this
the
point,
thing
like
you
I don't
want.
even
I'm not
try. I
offended.
don't even like. I just don't even try. I'll go out and I'll just like point at someone else, like or I'll just literally give the name
Yeah.
of someone else in
Yeah.
the group
So-
without asking them.
Mine, it's Brenda. That's
Yeah.
her name.
It would be harder for you to do that, like without pulling out a map of the world and like
Yeah, what am I-
pointing
And
at
even then,
like
it's not
this
spelled right,
country.
and then I get all pedantic about it.
No,
and,
it's
Yeah.
it's spelled Key anywhere that I have to go to eat. Like I don't
Totally.
even care.
I mean, and,
You
like,
know what's
why
funny
hurt
about
them?
my name is that it's never pronounced wrong, but it is always, almost 100% of the time, spelt wrong.
With an I.
Yeah,
Instead of a
it's
Y.
either A-I, it's almost always A-I-D-E-N. If they happen to get the Y right, because they asked, and I said A-Y-D-A-N, they still put A-Y-D-E-N. And it's always, without fault, even people that know me spell wrong.
Girl, that
I-
why not an I life? I swear
Yeah.
to God, it's
Yeah.
relentless.
You get that,
It
don't you?
Oh yeah,
Yep.
it never. And I just stopped correcting people.
Well, and
'cause,
that's
like
how
I know how it's spelled. Fuck it. I don't.
I just open up a message, one of our message windows, whenever I have to write your name for this podcast.
Fair
and
enough.
Just double check.
That is
first
fair
I
and
do
enough.
that
last
half
name
the time.
spelling.
I have actually spelt my own name wrong. I have put
Well,
A-Y-D-E-N.
I mean,
You picked it out. You should like.
Well,
I
you know
guess
what? That's
maybe
how
it's Ian
society
today.
affects
Maybe it's
us.
Ian
See,
you
today.
know,
autocorrect
I just
screws me
naturally want to
sometimes.
assimilate. I am a woman.
it is a woman's job.
It is a
after
woman's
all.
job to assimilate, you know.
So what are we here to talk about, Chyna?
Oh God.
Yeah, I'm just. Woo.
Yeah, no,
that's a.
I'm an open book, really. I think a big part of it is that I'm an interesting weirdo, and
Hell yeah.
I also
and
happen to
here
be
in this
disabled
space,
and-
that is a huge compliment, by the way.
I think so. I mean,
Yeah.
I've come to peace with it, and it got to the point where it's like, well, at least now that I'm like fully disabled, there's no sense in trying to pretend anymore. So really the biggest gift of it, aside from like basically learning that I'm a superhero, is being able to live my freest, weirdest life. Like I can just,
Yeah.
I'm card carrying crazy now. I can do whatever I want.
Carrying
Not that
crazy.
anyone can do whatever they want, you guys. I swear. Go do it. Don't wait for the card, man.
You know what's funny is that now that I've because I just a few months ago actually finally was able to get on full disability.
Yeah.
Because I literally just couldn't work. Like I couldn't physically and couldn't mentally work anymore. And now that I'm on disability, I'm like, our system, our society,
It's broken.
fucked up.
It's broken.
This whole crazy business of working 10 hours a day and then just barely recovering on the weekend so that you can work 10 hours a day to never have enough money to even just be comfortable, much less survive. Bullshit. It's all bullshit.
And I think in answer to your question, Key, really what I'm here to talk about more than anything is not just what it's like to live with the quote unquote invisible illnesses, of which there are lots, physical and mental illnesses, so
yes.
many. But also that I'm in a fairly privileged position to be able to be both part of the system and also able to observe it objectively. I don't, like we were discussing earlier, I don't hallucinate 24 hours a day. I don't have
totally.
like sensory process. Well, I have major memory loss, but I don't have like speech impairment. I can self-advocate. I know what my diagnosis is. I know how to care for myself and ask for help. And so many people in the U.S. particularly cannot get that help because they can't self-advocate. I mean, what are you going to do when you can't verbalize what's wrong with you?
Well,
or
I mean, one of the common things the therapist I have now, whom I love, is specializes in anxiety, and so I didn't have to really like. I would be like, yeah, I'm dealing with this, and she'd be like, oh, I completely understand. Is it? And then she was like, is it like this? Is it like this? And it was just so validating. But when you have anxiety to the level I do, it's more uncommon that I can even leave my house than it is common. Like when I tell her what I can do, it's more surprising to her what I can do.
Certainly so.
And there's just, I don't know what the explanation for that is. It's not because I'm like exceptional. That's not what I mean. But it's just my variances are on that. And because she's like, you know, like most people that have the level of anxiety I do, they can't leave their house. She would have to go to their house to do someone had to go to them. And so if most people who have the level of anxiety I have can't even get out of the house, how are they supposed to talk to their
anyone
doctors,
supposed to get
their
help?
medication, get the medication they need? How are they supposed to make a phone call to make an appointment?
Before I was hospitalized, that was my whole life. I did not leave the house for upwards of 8 months.
Yep.
Just to backtrack a little bit, to give some background, I have clinical major depressive disorder that I have had my whole life since I was 3. I mean, in my entire living memory.
If you don't mind me asking,
please.
Is it from an experience or was it like a physiological
I believe it's genetic. My mom also struggles with major depression. My grandmother, her mom also struggles, has her whole life, and then her mother before her is kind of a mean old lady, but she I think probably also struggled in her lifetime as well. But whereas my mom and my grandmother, they're intelligent and compassionate, and so they didn't tend to take it out on others, I think, quite as much as my great grandmother did.
Absolutely, yeah.
And certainly my grandma less than her, my mom less than her mom, and me certainly less than my own mom tend to take it out on others. But it's definitely genetic, and there were signs of it when I was a tiny baby. I mean, issues with overstimulation, also being right on the line of the autism spectrum, never quite like, quote, impaired enough to receive help or a diagnosis or anything like that, but lots of sensory processing issues.
There isn't help for people who need a little help. There's
Oh,
only
God,
help for
no.
people who need all of the help.
Oh my God, no. And
which is another part of our system that's so broken.
And that's how I lived my whole life up until it was just basically a slow crumbling spiral. Pre-hospitalization and diagnosis was just, I felt like I'm a strong person, you know what I mean?
Totally.
And so it was like I was hanging on to this sinking ship and still like sailing the ship.
Yeah.
But it was sinking, and there was really nothing I could do about it because I was undiagnosed, I was untreated, I was in a string of horrible abusive relationships. I needed help, but I only needed a little bit of help.
So there
if
was
we
no
had
one to
caught
ask.
it before,
Yep.
before my whole life fell apart.
Yeah.
And by the time that I needed big time help, I was calling the hotline at our local mental hospital. I was calling and telling them, you need to send a sheriff here to get me and bring me to the hospital right now, or I am going to die.
Yeah.
I'm going to die.
Absolutely.
And they ended up not taking me to the mental hospital right away. They took me to the medical hospital because I weighed 72 pounds.
So
I
they couldn't even address the psychological
many
days
days
until they could address the physical ones.
I had to be put on a feeding tube. They gave me saline. They basically had to bring me back to life before they could send me to the psychiatric hospital to be diagnosed and treated.
Yeah.
And the fact that that's something that you kind of touched on as being something that you kind of almost made it seem like I don't want to say positive experience, but you were talking about after this, thing, you were starting to be able to get the help you needed, but just the fact again that before that you couldn't get the help, and the fact that we have to break according to our culture before we're able to go and even get
any kind of help or assistance whatsoever.
Prevention is so just not cared for in our culture, because why bother going and listening to these warning signs, even if maybe sometimes there might be false flags. I don't even want to even bring that up, but I don't understand why we would even consider the risk of not acknowledging that
maybe they're faking
maybe
it or
we'll
whatever.
Maybe I might get worse and I don't want to get worse, and that should be enough of a reason for people to be let's make it so that things don't get worse, because the moment before you were hospitalized, I'm sure if you didn't get hospitalized then, there is a risk that it would just
I would be dead.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Well, and that's what I was.
Without a doubt, I would absolutely not be here.
And that's what I was going to say is that not everyone, probably most people, aren't as strong. And people have told me this before. Actually, I've had someone tell me most people don't survive what you've been through.
Totally.
Most people would not be alive currently right now if they'd gone through it.
Before,
And that's the thing is that what frustrates me is, obviously suicide is just out of control, at this. And I don't mean that as, people are committing suicide too much and they should know better. That's not what I mean.
No, but suicidal ideation en masse is an epidemic right now.
There is no help for you until it's too late.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? And most people can't handle the trauma, and then there's nothing, people, they try to reach out to somebody and they're like, oh, just take a bath or go on a vacation, and you're
go walk in the woods. Stick a crystal up your ass.
And people joke about that all the time. I joke about that all the time.
Well,
but it is
of course.
legitimately a real
We joke
thing.
about it to cope. When you literally hear do yoga as a fucking treatment option, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Okay.
I've heard that one specifically.
I get in a lot of
tight
times
hamstrings are not my medical problem.
On Facebook, I will often times enough just be hey, how dare you shame people about that kind of stuff for mental illness, because it's messed up. But I legitimately had someone say, no, I'm not.
Oh no.
Yeah, no. I saw a thread where someone was talking about how because cancer is something caused by your body, your mind could choose to undo it.
Is that something?
And yoga, specifically yoga. This person
God.
brought up yoga.
My
By doing yoga, you will
God.
have greater control over your mind and body, and that will prevent cancer. And I just went off on this person by being hey, as someone with cancer who has a brain that definitely doesn't want cancer,
firstly, fuck you.
Also,
who the
I can't.
Yeah.
I'm going. This is when I was I was going through some physical therapy at the time of just trying to do walking, because doing something of standing up and having my arm outstretched was physically exhausting. I can't. It's hard to express. Even to myself, sometimes it almost feels hard to remember, because it's kind of feels like a lifetime ago, even though it was. A year and a half, it was less than 2 years ago. I couldn't do any of this, and then having someone be well, maybe if you did more yoga, you wouldn't have gotten fucking leukemia, Key. That's...
and I know
I'm going to
say you're... No, probably not. I'm going to just go out
if
on a
I've
limb.
ever wanted to participate in murder, it would have been in that situation.
That nonsense.
I fucking hate when people invalidate your health issues because they've never experienced them.
And like that's so much more common for any type of like mental illness in any way that it's portrayed. And like all of that meme that you see going around once every like 8 months or so of like, you know, like this picture of like a forest being like, oh, like
this is an antidepressant.
Yeah. And then like pills, this is shit. And I was like, well, I mean, like, yeah, that seems like a kind of nice day, and we have some good forests, but like...
Yeah, do I feel kind of better about my depression when I'm going for a walk in the woods? Yes, sometimes, but...
Sometimes,
but
but not all the time, and not enough.
And also,
you know, like...
being able to get up, get dressed, get showered, do the basic things needed to
work, man.
Go and do that. Like,
yeah.
Anyone who's, like, been through therapy will know that, yeah, like, okay. I'm not trying to overstate lifestyle changes because I do understand that things are a lot more complex than that. But
totally.
With lifestyle changes, life oftentimes can get better.
Yes.
Depending on the person and lots of other external circumstances. But yeah, with lifestyle changes, those can be really good and positive things. And almost anyone who's giving you medication will also encourage
But the thing
certain
about
lifestyle
that
changes.
is, if you have a broken leg, you can't like go
Walking
for a walk
in the forest
in
isn't
the
gonna
woods
fix it.
to make you feel better about your broken leg. You need a cast and therapy and
and
pain
that's what
medication
so many people
and like
what?
And like playing some nice music for you while you're recovering's probably going to make it less shitty.
Yes,
but
exactly.
Like,
only less shitty, not better, just less shitty.
Because that's the problem. Then I agree that meme makes me so mad because not only is it just like horribly offensive and frustrating, but bitch, it's also wrong.
It's wrong.
Like, no, those are trees and those are
it's
my
not
pills.
It's
like,
not about
what
opinion. It's not uninformed. It's just flat out
They
wrong.
wouldn't be saying that about nitroglycerin for a heart condition. They wouldn't be saying that about a wheelchair user's wheelchair. Why on earth?
Well,
would
actually,
we
the
say
people who
this?
made those memes probably
They would.
yeah,
You're right.
They
Those people would.
theoretically wouldn't be saying
with
that
enough
about cancer,
with
but
enough
you know.
yoga, your legs might just grow back.
Yeah.
So
you
you
ever
got the
tried
stump,
yoga?
you just need to stretch it out
Yeah,
to pull the leg
exactly.
again.
What the hell? No,
And
I have
you
a
know
dear
what the-
friend. I have a dear friend who is one of my greatest mental health inspirations, actually. But she is severely bipolar, has it managed impeccably well. Still experiences extreme symptoms. It still kind of runs her life sometimes. I swear to God, she went to the doctor to get a referral to another therapist. They told her that she was going to have to make an appointment at county to get re-diagnosed with bipolar disorder.
Because she looked too good?
It's a lifelong...
Yeah.
You don't just one day stop being
Yep.
bipolar. That's not how anything
It's a permanent
works.
illness. It's a permanent condition.
What?
Yeah.
That's not how anything works.
I've experienced that
like
where
a fundamental
people...
misunderstanding of how the brain works.
Well, because my therapist told me this, that she has experienced this. She specifically got training in doing disability evaluations.
Yeah.
So like, you know, because you have to be evaluated by a therapist for them to
Which are a nightmare,
to
by the way.
validate. Yeah, most of them are. And she said that she got training and in it, and so she was shadowing this guy, and this woman walked in, makeup done, hair done perfectly, nice clothes, very well put together, all this kind of stuff. And of course the guy was like, oh, well, you know, they probably don't need it. That's not. And she was like, no. Like, she goes, I've worked with people like that, where when they have this very intense self-pride that they don't like people seeing them less than perfect. She said, this is probably the only time in the last 2 or 3 weeks she's done her makeup or put on nice clothes. She didn't buy that name brand shirt for $150. She bought it for $5 at a thrift store before
Get
she
this.
came
You're going to
here.
lose your freaking mind. Okay, so...
I'm prepared to be blown away right now.
Oh, my God.
There's not much more I can lose, so be careful.
It makes me mad in retrospect, like mad all over again, even though I was there and mad at the time. Okay.
Yeah.
So I was getting evaluated for disability. It's a goddamn nightmare. You fill out the same like 12-question questionnaire 800 times with every doctor, every social worker, every office you go into. You fill out literally the same questionnaire. Right. Okay.
Fine.
Don't you guys talk? Don't you have fax machines?
Absolutely
What the hell?
not.
Okay, whatever. So after jumping through all these hoops, right, I managed to get to one woman before going to the social services office. I have a meeting with her to get like pre-approved for disability. I managed
step.
right, yeah, so fun. I managed to put on mascara that day, right, which is, bear in mind, I hadn't showered in probably 3 months. I had literal worms living in my carpet because I hadn't cleaned or gotten up out of bed in months and months. I barely was able to make it out of the house. I was, like I said, 72 pounds soaking wet. This woman had the nerve to tell me, by the way, when you go in for your next consultation, you might want to consider not wearing mascara. It might give them the wrong idea. I could not believe it. Like, it took my breath away. And I didn't say anything at the time because, of course, like, I was so stunned and so devastated by that
also,
piece of
like,
advice, like that, how dehumanizing it was. Not only that, but if I had the presence of mind to, like, tell her a piece of it, it's like, this is the one human thing that I have done in weeks.
Months. Yeah, exactly.
And here I am being punished for, like, daring to try and feel good about myself. Like, how dare you ask for help and still want to feel good about
like
yourself?
You went to the salon for a 6-hour appointment before you got
Mascara,
there. You
that's it.
put mascara
That was it.
on. Oh, I have a story.
Like, I'm filthy. Are you kidding?
Yeah.
Look at what?
I
Are
have
you
a
kidding
story
me?
that I don't know if I've told you this, Key. I can't remember, but I went to a year ago. I spent 24 hours in the local mental health institution because I was going to commit suicide, and the only reason I knew is because I had taken suicide training, and I was like years prior, and I was like, oh, this is the step that
this is
if
that.
I don't get help, I'm going to commit suicide.
Yeah.
And so I have some very dear friends that helped me out, and this therapist that I still currently have, and I spent I spent a night at the Semper Virens, and I am not joking when I say during the intake, one of the nurses who was asking me questions shamed me for not eating well enough. And when I told him, I was like, well, at that time, I had no income. So I was on state disability trying to apply for disability because I literally couldn't work anymore.
Yeah.
And so I didn't make
like,
enough money to buy food. And so
thanks for pointing it out.
And I told them that, and they said, well, it's not that hard to just make sure that you only shop on the outside of the store where all the produce and everything is. Literally shames me for that. Oh, it gets better. Another one of the intake nurses who was,
they're the worst.
so they were processing paperwork, and while they were one of the other intake nurses that was sitting with me, unprovoked, I wasn't talking to them or making conversation. I didn't want to talk to anybody. Another one of the nurses straight up looked me in the eye, unprovoked, and said, so are you going to fully transition, like have the surgery?
Ooh.
I am in Semper Virens mental health institution for suicide. Guess what? Yes, I am a trans individual. That 100% contributes to the reason I don't want to live anymore, because of all of the reasons that society has created. And I'm going to be in here for suicide, and you are supposed to be a professional, like, medical.
And there's a difference between, compassionately reaching out and saying, like, I understand.
Like, we have resources or something.
I get the statistics. I get that it must be horrendous and difficult for you, especially during this time. What can we do as a hospital, not a business?
As a mental health institution.
It's a hospital.
Not
like,
exactly, not a business.
Not a prison.
Or even
what
if they
in the
said,
hell?
Or even if they said, I'm not super educated, but I do know that there are certain things that trans individuals usually want.
What
and
are your
if
needs?
you need resources, I can give you these resources.
Yeah, but not being
But
like, so did you get the surgery yet?
They were not asking for my benefit. They were literally just curious.
is
It was
so
just
unprofessional. I
their
can't even
their way
believe
of asking,
it.
you know, oh, do you still have a dick?
But
You
I'm
know?
not, yeah, how
Like,
inappropriate
that's literally
is that?
what they
And
were saying.
weirdly enough, as a nurse, that question would have been less unprofessional. If they had literally said, like, okay, so, you know, as a doctor, I'm inquiring as to your genitalia.
Yeah.
Like, that is
which
okay.
restroom
in
would you like to
yes,
to use, or which
in
you
a
know
medical
should be, yeah.
contact? Do you need menstrual products or not?
Yeah,
Like, what are
absolutely.
your needs? There's a difference between that and whatever the hell she asked.
So are you gonna have the
'cause-
surgery?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
And literally, I'm not joking. With it referenced the genital
Oh,
area with their hand.
gestures broadly to the genital area,
Yeah,
huh?
so you're gonna
Wow.
have the surgery? Yep.
Okay.
So what's
all
your plans
right.
for down
yeah.
there?
So
Yeah.
Got any
what's your
renovation?
deal?
Which, as a trans woman,
What?
I get that question asked by lots of people.
I
And
assume
it is
like
incred-
90% of matches on Tinder.
Oh
yeah, Are
God.
you kidding? Literally,
That's just the opener, right?
90%. If I'm on a dating app of any kind, gay, straight, whatever they want to qualify as, that is
Oh, everyone's got to know about the plumbing.
always
Why
the
do you
first.
wanna know? What
Sometimes,
does it matter?
sometimes someone will be like, "Hey, how's your day going?" I'm like, "Oh, how refreshing!" Someone who actually wants to know how I'm doing.
It's a
Literally
lie.
The next message is, "So do you still have a dick?"
God damn it.
I'm like, "Why do you think that's any of your business?"
How's your
Right.
day going? How many erections have you gotten? And if zero, why?
I'm
Like-
Did they
Like,
last
that-
longer than 4 hours? Because I'm just,
then we
you know,
can talk,
I'm
you know?
just worried about you.
I have
seriously,
absolutely
though, what-
decided because I get that
What is
question.
everyone's
I have
like obsession with the plumbing? I
have
don't
gotten
understand.
that question from like cashiers at grocery stores or people. I'm
Oh
not
my
joking.
God.
And I have absolutely decided that the next time someone asks me that question, I'm just gonna, because sometimes it'll be like I'm standing in line and someone behind me. You know, that kind of thing. I'm absolutely gonna look them in the eye and say one of two things. If you can explain to me why that is in any of your information, I'll answer it. Or two, I'll just look them in the eye and be like, if they ask me like, so do you still have a penis? Are you going to have surgery? I'm going to say, I'm going to ask them some kind of personal question that I can think of about
Like,
their genitalia.
Do you still have a penis?
So
Yeah.
like,
Did you have a penis? Do you have a penis? Do you have a vagina?
have
Do
you
what does that
waxed
look
your
like?
asshole, sir?
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Just curiosity as two strangers.
Yeah, as
like-
two
Right, we're
strangers,
chatting
yeah.
about our penises. Let's chat about
Are
our
you
penises.
a bottom or a
How's your
top?
penis?
Do you like to have sex?
What do you
do
got
you
going
like
on?
hookers? Do you like
Yeah,
to have
what's your
sex
deal?
with strippers? What are
because
what are
we're
your
having
sexual
super
preferences?
inappropriate, intimate conversations
Anything
about
and
our
everything that-
genitals in
yeah.
the fucking line at Winco. Like, okay,
Yeah.
well, let's talk then, since we're obviously besties now.
Yeah.
What on earth? And
That's the thing, is that my good friends or people who have any amount of respect for me, you've never asked that question
Yeah,
because it's irrelevant.
Right. This is an interesting sort of like tie back into the
Yeah.
the trans experience and the mental health journey are so complicatedly separate but interlinked. Like,
They're
it's
separate
I think-
issues, but often
The issues
one
overlap.
has experienced the other.
I
Exactly.
find so often that, you know, when I talk with anyone else who's been like has mental health stuff or anyone with disability things, like you find so often that all aspects of life end up getting tied, and it's so often in like textbooks and things they try to go and separate stuff, and they might show like some
Life is not like
correlation,
that.
but no, every single aspect of like who you are as a person is
Yeah.
going to be tied to each other.
Like, one is always affected by the other.
Like
Period.
for you, just like first, you know, you like with both your physical and mental illnesses, like as a gay man, that affected you in a way, or as someone who
Living as a gay
portrayed
man.
them and lived as a gay man.
No, I knew what
and
you meant,
now
yeah.
As you know, I guess technically now you're like the straightest one on the podcast. You're now a straight woman. So how does that make you?
I'm not a straight woman. Let me
Okay.
tell you.
I was
Almost
gonna
on
say,
almost
I don't
on
know about
almost on
that.
principle after I
Almost
came
on
out as a
principle,
trans
yeah.
woman, my biggest fear was like, I'm not going to fucking be straight. I'm going to figure out some other aspect of my
All right.
and no, I absolutely.
So I was,
No, that's a good
here
good
I am
joke.
Trying to make a joke.
Well, you made a great joke.
thank you.
That was a great joke.
That happens a lot, actually. I've known several trans women specifically who like accidentally become like literally the straightest person in the friend group. It happens a lot.
It absolutely.
And actually on Facebook, there's this whole conversation. It was like an entire thread full of straight trans women planning to go to the Straight Pride Boston march.
Shut up.
Isn't that spectacular? They're like, yeah, well, why
we're
not?
straight. Why wouldn't we support that?
Yeah, straight pride.
Because the only fucking community that's ever advocated for you is not the straight one.
No, of course not. And it
Even
was just
if you
fabulous.
Don't
I was like,
as queer,
like
or
you,
gay, or any of like.
You crash that parade, and you tell me how it is.
And see what
amazing.
See
Watch
if
their
they welcome
minds
you.
just explode.
Yeah.
What do you mean?
Well, and often, I mean, it is a really common thing is that like they were a trans woman, they're attracted to women when they were a straight man, when they were cis man, quote unquote, but they're still attracted to women, and so many people don't understand the concept of
a trans lesbian.
Yeah.
Why is that so complicated?
Well, they don't understand.
It's just a lesbian.
They don't understand the fact that identity and preference, sexual identity, sexual preference,
and genital preference.
Exactly.
It's totally separate.
Gender, all of those things are completely different,
Yep.
and they just don't understand that.
Yeah, and like there's also things of people who are non-binary and choosing like those labels of like people who like for some reason, it took me a while to even it took me until recently to even think of a lot of that experience. And the first time I heard someone was like, yeah, no, I am a lesbian, but I am not a woman. I'm non-binary, but I still feel like that's the terminology that kind of still works best for me. And I'm obviously not the expert on almost anything.
Well,
what are you talking about?
Like everything, but no,
you are kind of a lesbian, technically. I'm just kidding.
Okay, if you want to go with the biologically open person, and also kind of identity-wise, nothing ever is.
No, I meant that if you're gonna separate,
yeah.
Gender from sexual preference, then to me, would that mean that a lesbian means you're only attracted to women?
Vaginas?
Yeah,
vagina-bearing women?
Mean
That's very specific.
That straight people are all lesbians?
Yes,
straight men are
I
all
don't
lesbians?
even know.
That's what I'm gonna start saying.
I mean, from my part, that I am non-binary. I came out when I was 15, 16. And actually at that time was looking into medically transitioning, and saw myself as sort of a closeted queer man, but have come to realize that really is not true either. And that was an interesting part of this is where I was going with the trans experience and the mental health journey overlap, because dysphoria for a non-binary person is a very transitive, complicated sort of concept. Whereas there are many binary trans people where it's I was assigned male at birth and I identify strongly with womanhood and these two things, and that's wonderful and that's fine. And so and of course I'm generalizing here, but a lot of the dysphoria that comes from that is for the masculine attributes, the things that are traditionally what we see as masculine. And then growing up as a non-binary person, coming to terms with my body and coming to terms with my mental health, where my dysphoria has a polarity to it, where if I am not performing masculinity right or not performing femininity right, if I am not living up to one or either or both
at
of
the
these
same time
standards, it's impossible.
Yeah,
and so
absolutely.
that's cultural and that's
I was
mental, and
there's so much we could talk about the which I shouldn't have as many opinions. I should just leave it. But a lot of things about the kind of genderqueer, non-binary, trans experience relating to both the physical and cultural aspects of masculinity and femininity, where so much of what we have decided, the whole fucking pink aisle,
it's so arbitrary,
and stuff like that. So much of these aspects aren't rooted in any kind of science.
No.
No. In fact,
And here's the thing.
I have spoken at HSU to sexual diversity classes about that exact topic. And just before we go on, also, I do want to let you know, Key, that as many jokes as I make about it, you are literally one of the only straight people in my life that I have no problem talking, discussing.
That isn't terrible?
Or what was that? That isn't awful. that talking, discussing gender, trans, all of that, I have no problem with it at all, which is saying a lot.
Key's a safe space.
Yeah,
It's
but
true.
absolutely.
I try to be like as aware of that as possible because like
Which is why you're not
mean,
terrible.
I remember like being 9 and like there's a gay joke I made when I was 9. I'm not gonna say it again, but I still like remember like, oh, I said that.
I was raised in church. I said a lot of homophobic, terrible things growing up, thinking that was the norm. You know,
And internalized. Okay. Here, this is the thing about that, and the thing that I find fascinating it transcends the like quote biological gender. It transcends gender roles and expectations, orientation and identity. Every single human struggles and at least has to experience their own performance of their gender identity. Cis people.
yes, absolutely.
Trans people, non-binary, we all absolutely perform our gender, whatever that is. Everyone feels a pressure to do that, and and like you look at like gender confirmation or affirmation surgery, right?
Yeah.
Is that the term now? Because I've been saying gender reassignment surgery, and I
changes all the time.
I don't think that's right, but I
heard
don't know
affirmation, and I loved that.
Me
'cause
too.
It
It sounds a lot better than
says,
gender
but
reassignment.
What I was getting at with that is that, you know, you always hear about the surgery with trans people, right?
Yeah.
But what we don't talk about is how that is a surgery to reaffirm their gender identity. And cis people get those too. You have
Yes.
jaw broadening, nose straightening, bicep implants, butt implants. People get liposuction to trim in their waist. People get boob jobs to emphasize their breasts. Cis people are getting
cis women get facial
feminization
surgeries. Yep.
Exactly.
But
I mean,
as long as you're not changing, your genitals, then it's totally fine.
Yeah, like tattoos
Yeah.
are also
Thank
basically
you.
the same thing.
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
Exactly.
One of the things like I respect most about tattoos is that's one of the things where you're like proving like, hey, I am choosing something to be permanently different about my body, and it's basically the same thing, except I mean, unless if you get some like really crazy like gender reaffirming surgeries, like it most likely won't be all the like patterns and colors, but you know, like that could be an interesting.
I was wondering where you were going.
I know,
with that,
I was
but
too.
yeah,
I was like,
oh,
Yeah, like,
is my gender plaid today?
yeah.
It could be, but you're totally right.
Yeah, you're
these are all
absolutely right.
things that we do to self-affirm our identity, whether it's gender related or just physical or whatever it is. We just want to be who we are, man.
So on that, like, I literally just had an experience yesterday, and I've thought about this before. I'm not just relating to gender to a video game, but kind of am. I mean, it's. So I just literally, for the first time in my life, downloaded and played Sims 4 last night.
Aw.
I know. That's a whole other story too about why I'm 35 and just now starting to
Because it's
get into video.
amazing and
Well, I
super
wasn't-
affirming and
Well,
live your
growing up
best
in-
life
Growing up
oriented.
in the environment I did, my dad just said that video games were only for lazy people, so I just started absorbing that. Anyways, that's different.
Sure.
But
And that's when you decide to be lazy.
Yeah.
100%.
Like,
Also,
Can do, Dad. Can do.
I could talk an entire podcast about how the term lazy is 100% defined by the person using it and
also,
not actually a real thing.
ableist as hell.
Absolutely
Can
ableist.
you imagine the number of times I've been called depression since 3? I've been called lazy probably at least once a month since I was a toddler.
Oh, absolutely.
Ableist and also really classist
Very
because
classist.
you
Absolutely.
notice that people who like happen to be doing a lot better financially
Do more
don't-
things.
Like
Yeah.
they can spend however long they want doing whatever they want, and there's no repercussions. But if you're
Because they're successful,
technically-
quote unquote.
technically able to work and are like, yeah, but I kind of would rather just like go and make a restart of Fallout 4 like today.
Also, when you're a single parent and you're working 4 jobs and you're poor as hell and you don't qualify for any benefits because for some reason you make too much and you're living
$20 too much.
Yeah.
a hellish life and you like dare to do something nice for yourself, God help you. On the other side, you dare to take a break, God help you.
Yep.
And on top of that, most poor people don't have the energy for bullshit. You know what I want to do when I'm done like working, even when I'm not supposed to be working because I'm disabled? I'll go make an extra $20 under the table because otherwise
absolutely.
I won't eat.
No,
And
but yeah, I was going to say nobody on disability doesn't have another income, reported or not, because you can't survive on it.
And I'm not going to get home from a 14-hour day of scrubbing other people's toilets and be like, you know what I'm going to do? Go for a bike ride. I'd literally rather
I'm
die.
going to cook a 3-course meal and clean my kitchen.
No, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to lay naked on my couch and get myself covered in Cheeto dust, and I'm going to play. Lately, I've been playing Dauntless because it's free and amazing. But
Dauntless,
like,
I haven't heard of that one.
crossplay, it's freaking amazing. It's on all
We
sorts
should
of-
talk
anyway,
after this, yes.
but you know what I mean? Like the whole concept of laziness is
so stupid and so wrong and so
fucked up.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, I don't have the money to do things.
Right, yeah, exactly.
Like, doing things costs money, gas money to get wherever you want to go, money to buy the food you want to socialize and eat with, blah, blah, blah. Anyways, but what I was going to say is, so I just started playing it and I made 2 characters. One of them was a female and they looked like what you would imagine like a butch lesbian to kind of look like, you know, short hair that was like gray and then like two tattooed sleeves and jeans and a baggy shirt and
so just every character I make in Fallout 4 go on.
Yes, absolutely.
Sure.
Yeah.
And that for me, I was like, if I could walk into a booth and like in Jetson style, like ding 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 ding, type out that's exactly how it would look. I'd have a bunch of tattoos. I'd have like really like hair like I have now basically. But like I would basically look like what the stereotype is for like a butch lesbian.
Which is interesting because when I sitting next to you and vibing with you, like that is absolutely how you vibe. What I see, like how you carry yourself.
When
like
I
that,
first came out as trans, though, I felt like I had to have long hair, only wear dresses. But it took me over a year to realize that being a woman doesn't mean I have to look any certain way.
And real quick, can I just... Isn't performing femininity freaking exhausting?
It's fucking
Isn't
exhausting.
Exhausting. It's relentless and constant, and like you have to be hairless in just the right way and extra hairy and all the right. What?
Yeah.
Like,
you have to have a lot of hair, but only on your head and nowhere else. And
lose weight, but only in these really specific places. And God help you if you have no ass, because that is just.
We love thick girls, but if they're going to be thick, it has to be
thick.
here. Yeah.
What? No.
I've had this conversation with so many cis women, and then
they give you shit for wearing mascara.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's only the medical professionals.
Oh my God.
My friends who are cis women, they'll be like, no, they're like, we don't mean to take away from your experience by any means, but basically, welcome to being a woman.
I mean,
you know what I'm saying? Like these are things that women deal with, and they're not trying to invalidate me.
Yeah.
They're just trying to say that like this is how you are experiencing how fucked up our society is. You know.
There's always about, like you said, because there has to be. You know,
because there has to be,
course,
because guys don't like women without butts.
Totally.
So anyways, I made that character, and that's how I identify. And then I made another character, their roommate. I think I made them siblings. That's not the point.
I was going to say roommates, huh?
Yeah,
a little on the nose, isn't it?
No, I think I specifically...
How quick did they move in together?
I specifically made them siblings because, and neither one of them can have or produce kids.
Oh,
because I'm like, fuck, I know this is not going to be what this is. That's, again, another podcast.
Right?
But, so she is a very masculine presenting, but also glamorous, like basically stereotypical butch lesbian looking, and then he's an incredibly feminine gay man with pink hair and wears makeup every single day and has great fashion, prefers feminine clothes, all those kind of things.
So how you present and your type.
100%. 100%. I'm like, this is who I want to be. That's who I want to date. But by the time I was done creating the characters, I was legitimately in tears because I'm like, I just want the freedom to be both of these people.
Yeah. And
you know
everyone, cis
and
people,
everyone
trans people,
experiences that.
everybody
That's what
should be free.
Yes.
Should be free. This is I think the thing that I lament the most, and that is the most frustrating when we reach, when we meet resistance in the fight for gender expression, is I think a lot of people get the misconception that we're fighting for ourselves to be able to express our gender and like fuck everybody else.
However the fuck we want to.
But
yeah.
On top of that, like I'm sitting next to a cis guy here, and like part of my fight is for him also to be able to express and explore and identify however he wants to, and whatever he wants to.
Which would make him happier, which would make everyone he interacts with happier.
When I worked at Target, there would be some days where I had this brilliant blue hair. Thank you again, Aydan.
You're welcome.
Oh, it was the best.
And when I had that, I also had this kind of the same sort of like teal blue, like shiny nail polish, which I like wearing. And like so often I found myself, lying to like random like older dudes, just be like, oh yeah, I just lost a bet, like, because even before that, like years before that, when I
do
would
that,
be like wearing like nail polish, I'd be like, oh yeah, no, I just. This was I have a friend that just wanted to, and I was like, yeah, okay,
God,
they're going to beauty college, so I let them practice.
Very straight boys are around the girl types.
Oh, seriously, it makes me want to cry.
Our like nail polish, and I don't even think this looks fantastic and brings out my eyes.
And they have so much self-doubt. People who put that on others, people who get aggressive,
and the people who are
they have so much because they've never been allowed to explore it. Like
they're making fun of you because they're jealous,
and nobody's ever asked. Like, sure, I absolutely believe. Like, you're a cis man. That's great.
Yeah.
What does that mean to you? Nobody has ever asked them, like, what does being a man mean to you? And that may well mean wearing nail polish sometimes. That may very well, being a woman may well be having a beard.
Absolutely.
Being a human is totally and completely subjective. And we want for redneck Jim Bob to feel safe enough in his world to be able to ask these questions about himself.
And who the majority of people who identify as cross-dressers, I'm not using that as a derogative term, that is as a legitimate,
cross-dressers, yeah,
who are cross-dressers are
straight cis men,
the redneck Jim Bob. They are cross-dressers because a lot of them are cross-dressers because they're so oppressed in their daily life that the only way they can experience it is, one, in secret, and two, in extreme.
And it hurts everyone. It hurts everyone because they're not women.
Nope.
They're men. They're expressing their masculinity by wearing a dress, and that's fine.
I cannot tell you how many straight men I have met on a dating site who confide in me and tell me that they wear women's underwear.
Like, okay,
on a regular basis.
They're just underwear, my guy.
They're just and the point of that is that I'm like the first person they've ever told, and the only reason they feel comfortable with me is because I'm a trans woman.
And this is the other side of that, is that it continues this misconception of trans women equals dude in a dress.
Yes.
Everybody loses because it's like dude in a dress equals woman, trans woman equals dude in a dress. Neither of these things are true.
The sad thing about that is that in their mind, they're being incredibly open and supportive, and this is a huge deal for them.
Yeah.
And I try to respect that as much as possible because the lack of education and experience and exposure is so massive.
It's important. It's not your job, but it's
important. They don't even know that is like not a big deal. That like meeting a trans woman and telling them you wear lacy underwear sometimes, I'm like, good for you.
That's a death risk right there.
Exactly.
Like, that is a leap of faith for them right there.
But it doesn't always have to be. Like, it probably, like, maybe like the first like time or two that it happened, like, okay, cool, you're opening up. But the fact is, like, well, this is a trend, and I don't need to be the only person that you're opening up in this way to. Like,
but they would never. They would
just open up a group chat later.
Like,
just open up a group chat. Like, start a group chat. Like, dudes who wear lacy underwears. With
just
all of them
add
in it,
every single person
every single man,
and then you just leave that group chat instantly because you don't fit in that, and just be like, "Hey guys, just
talk about
that's
it."
That's horrendous
I know all of you
and
do
precious,
it.
and I would like die to be a fly on the wall of that group chat because that'd be amazing.
obviously that would be an invasion of privacy and all these things.
Yes.
And don't do it, but totally do it, but
But
don't
also-
do it.
I don't fucking care if it's an invasion of privacy.
Honestly,
they all invade my privacy.
Right, that's
I
exactly
asked
it.
you if you have a dick or not.
Girl
Yeah.
sliding in your DMs demanding emotional labor and asking about your
Yeah.
penis. Go fuck yourself.
Yeah,
Like, you know what?
exactly.
Why don't I put you in touch with other actual dudes in dresses and y'all can talk it out?
And
because
by
I am
talk it
not
out,
that.
we mean have sex when your
Go.
wives are gone
Go
or
do
your
that,
boyfriends
'cause-
are gone or whoever,
Yeah,
like whatever.
'cause gay
yeah.
man, I am not.
Yeah,
Go away.
exactly. Go like one of the things I've talked about it to a lot of people, but not like I don't think on maybe not on the podcast. But one of the things I want to do, part of my personality is like when I am or when I see a problem, I don't want to like change it for myself. I want to fix the world. You know, that's
Sure.
just how
Yeah.
I work. And so one of the things I actually would love to be able to do, and I've taken one step in that. I recently started selling. Recently became like a Mary Kay representative,
Fun.
which has everyone and their family has already told me what a stupid decision that is. Which I'm
Whatever.
like,
It's fun.
fuck you. You
It's
know, like
fun. Who
I'm selling makeup and
cares?
it's fun and I'm using it. Like I don't care about your opinion. You go live your sad life.
Yeah.
But
I just use my whole Pampered Chef kit for myself.
I love
Like,
Pampered Chef.
I never
yes.
sold a single thing, but I just like got a bunch of nice cookware and left it at that.
So funny.
I
Okay,
feel
funny
that.
thing is, it is cheaper to become a Mary Kay representative than it is to buy all the products
It
they
is
send you.
by far because
But
it's all
like,
wholesale. Yeah.
by like half.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, anyways, but
So,
the
yeah.
reason I started doing that was because I want to start doing tutorials and videos and classes specifically on how to do makeup for trans women and femme presenting non-binary individuals, because there's not a lot of it's either young gay men who do a lot of
Drag.
makeup
Yeah.
or it's drag queens.
Yeah.
Nothing in between.
No,
Nothing
like what is like a day-to-day practical warm weather look that, you know, like slims your jawline and makes your cheekbones pop and like
to
makes
contour,
makes your eyelashes
how
kick
to
in,
adjust
like,
your makeup also when you start taking estrogen and your face becomes more feminine.
Your
How to
face
cover
shape,
up a
how to-
beard to go to work, not just to go on a show, you know,
And,
like
yeah, something nice and easy for days that you aren't being evaluated for whether or not you deserve to live,
Live.
according
Yeah,
to the government.
exactly.
See,
And
I
you-
brought
exactly.
it full circle. Kick
Exactly.
it.
So bringing it
You're
again,
welcome.
continuing this full circle trend, I appreciate that because actually I did have a point with all of this and
That's a first for this show.
I
We
know.
never
yeah,
do.
I
I
know,
know. I was
shocking.
like, oh, they have a point. That's
I do.
weird. I don't know what that's like. Yeah.
I know. It's stunning. But really what it comes down to is what we're working toward is a world in which everyone is truly free. And a big part of that is being honest with the fact that every single human out there, I refuse to believe that there is a single person on this earth who is not walking around with trauma.
Yeah,
Everybody
I
has trauma.
Certainly share that.
And as we
sentiment.
were talking about earlier, when you experience trauma, specifically trauma that is severe enough to cause any level of PTSD, it is measurable on an MRI, is measurable on a CAT scan. It is brain damage.
It is brain damage.
And we're all walking around acting like we don't have brain damage when it's treatable. That's this is my point. This is a treatable condition. I started doing EMDR, and my ability to mitigate episodes where I was having PTSD visual flashbacks. I was hallucinating sometimes for days at a time.
Oh, God.
And seeing blood on myself and seeing horrible, violent, graphic images of violence just flashing in front of my eyes all day. I'm trying to have a normal conversation at the freaking bank, and I'm like, oh, you have no face. I gotta go. And so this was happening to me
Oh yeah, my
all the
coworker.
time.
Yeah, Greg. He's,
Yeah, sure.
He's a
No
weird,
fa-
he's
no
a
face
weird,
Greg,
Yeah,
yeah.
he's a cool guy. Once
Cool
you get
guy.
past that.
Really
yeah.
needs therapy. But
face
anyway,
Greg.
so it got to the point where I was just like walking around with this it was debilitating.
Oh yeah.
More debilitating than my actual disability, which is
Yeah.
the memory loss, which is why I can't work because not having memories about 70% of the time really puts
You
a
can't
damper on your
remember
productivity.
how to do anything.
Yeah.
I've
So-
not to that extreme, but I've experienced
So
that.
I was triggered basically 24 hours a day for a long time, and then I started EMDR.
What is EMDR? Is that a medication?
I have to look it up. No, it's I have it written down. It is a type of therapy specifically, and it is a targeted treatment for PTSD and trauma-related brain damage, and essentially the gist of eye movement desensitization and processing, EMDR. And
have to look that
essentially the general idea behind it is using the two physical hemispheres of your body and relating them to the two physical hemispheres of your brain, and using physical stimulus and input, usually by vibrating paddles you hold in one hand or the other. Some therapists do thigh padding, like one or the other. And what you're doing is you are doing this physical stimulus while you're talking about the sources of your trauma and brain damage. And what happens is freaking miraculous because it rebuilds the neural pathways that were damaged by the trauma.
Wow.
Not only does it rebuild them, it rebuilds them in a different structure than they were in before. It is a workaround to the computer of our brain. It is a
I've never
physical
heard of this.
hack for the electrochemical machine that is our brain. It is miraculous. And when done by a really talented technician, I had mine done by a psychologist successfully. I tried it before that with a regular therapist, like a marriage and family therapist. And she was good, but not a doctor.
Yeah.
And so her idea of unearthing and targeting the trauma was a little bit, flexible. But it changed my life.
Wow.
And I realized that it changed my outlook on the world, because all of a sudden I realized there's all these people walking around with brain damage that is totally fixable and completely treatable, and they're carrying this pain around with them every second of every day and putting it on other people.
And literally don't know that they have
And they
options.
have no idea that it doesn't have to be that way. Everybody should get therapy. Everyone.
100%.
Even if you've never been through anything traumatic in your memory, even if you had a perfect family and upbringing, even if your life as you know it is fantastic, everybody should get therapy.
Yeah,
Agreed.
I've
Fucking
been-
get rid of algebra and replace it with
Right,
therapy.
exactly.
God, seriously.
like,
And that's
yeah,
really the point here.
Yeah,
I feel like
I've been in and out of therapy since the age of 11, actually.
Yeah.
Because of like some really severe like childhood traumas and like family stuff that happened, and that was like I've also after my diagnosis I was briefly on some well, I was seeing a therapist for about 2 or 3 months before I got diagnosed with cancer, and that was a really interesting time of being like, hey, I'm going to miss the appointment, but can we please have some other type of appointment? Or just
I still need your services, but for a completely different reason now.
yeah, like I actually like at one point apologized to her because I was like, I know this is not what we agreed to when I signed up, and they're like, no, it's like this is your going through
your
stuff. Like,
experience.
that is so
your
funny.
journey.
And that is classic person who actually really needs therapy.
Yep.
Like, okay, first day I'm seeing my new doctor, right? I was rambling on and on, trying to basically give him my life story in 55 minutes or less.
Yeah.
And I'm rambling on, and I look up and I realize he's just listening because he's a fucking therapist.
Yeah.
And I realize he's just staring at me, like writing in his little book and listening. I straight up apologized for talking too much. And he didn't say anything, which was perfect. He just sat there and let me sit with the apology, just let me like stew in it and realize what I had just said and how freaking ridiculous it was. He was
I told the doctor that gave me my diagnosis, my HIV diagnosis. I pretended not to react to it and had no emotional reaction. He's like, oh, you're taking it really well, because I've never had to give this news to anybody, and I wasn't sure how I was going to do it. It's like, oh, you did a great job, like
comforting your doctor.
Yep,
Yes,
I comforted the doctor that gave me my
trauma
HIV
things
diagnosis.
for real.
Yep.
For real.
But what I was going to say is like also like so after that I started taking antidepressants in the hospital. Actually, my therapist and I were like talking about it for a little while, and it was like, yeah, you should probably like, was kind of encouraging me, but can't like outright. And one time, like my doctor happened to come into the room while I was like on that video chat thing.
Oh shit.
And normally like this happens pretty frequently in the hospital. There would be a nurse, and then I would just be like, okay, well, I guess for the next 5 minutes of my setting, it's just going to be, we're both silent because you obviously can't really talk in any way because of confidentiality stuff, as I just get like my like temperature and my blood pressure and all of my like typical vitals, and then we go back to whatever
whatever
weird
it
stuff.
is.
And like I brought up like they were about to leave, and I was like, actually, I've been thinking maybe about getting some antidepressant. And apparently in the chemo ward, you don't need to have an explanation, because it's really common that people going through cancer are not in great mental health.
What do you have to be depressed about?
Strange. Why would you even be sad?
I've done that. I a couple months ago also got off of it because I was noticing that it was causing some cognition issues, and like, so I feel like both options are completely like, for whatever works best for the person. There's no right or wrong. Like we ragged on that meme of like, this is antidepressant, this is shit. But like for some people, actually, yes, lifestyle changes alone. Some people, medication doesn't work for them.
Sure.
Sometimes it only works for a certain period of time and then stops working.
I want to also make it very clear, because we're kind of getting near the end. PSA part that. No, there is no wrong way to process it, as long as you're not being harmful to yourself or those around you. Like, everyone's experience with mental illness, which everyone to some degree has an experience with mental illness, like, is going to be different. And whatever you're doing, you're doing the right thing out there.
And we rag a lot on it as a society. We rag a lot on people who self-medicate. Especially with like street drugs or alcohol, there's such a stigma against self-medication, and the conversation that isn't being had is the why. Why are these people choosing to medicate? There's
because
obviously
they don't
there's
have
an
access
underlying
to services they
exactly,
need.
and this kind of just comes back to everybody should get therapy. But I think that acknowledging that brain meds should make you more yourself. And if they're doing anything other than making you more yourself, you don't have to stay on a medication that isn't working for you.
Or you can ask for it to go to a
talk to your
different
doctor,
one.
you get on a different medication, you change the dose, try something else, because it's not hopeless.
No.
There's help.
That is actually something that I've never heard that phrase before. I don't know, like, if you coined it or like where you heard it from, but that's actually just a really like that's an obvious way, because that's kind of like what I was so afraid of. Because since high school, I was always like, I'm never going to be on meds because I am Key Van Harder, and like when I'm on meds, that's going to be a different person, because the brain chemistry is going to be different, and your brain's what makes you who you are. So I don't want to give up my life so that this other like happy guy with my name can go exist.
And you feel that way until that depression robs you of everything.
Until you realize you're not yourself anymore.
When I took like some antidepressants, I was like, no, I'm just have like some more brain energy to go do my fucking shit.
Right. It's almost like it's a chemical imbalance or something.
It's almost like
that
the trauma has caused
like
damage.
Witchcraft.
I wasn't swapped out with like happy Key.
Right, you're not a changeling,
like,
baby. It's just brain medication.
Totally.
And it's not forever, and it's not for everyone, but like you'll never know unless you go ask for help.
I can't say whether or not I will or will not choose in some point in the future to go back on the meds I was at, different ones, or what I will choose to do, because you know, who knows what anyone's life has in store. But I feel like lots of people are uncomfortable in either direction. Some people like feel like there's so much pressure. You know, in high school I also had a therapist who was really pushing for that a lot more.
Happen.
And like that's also wrong, because like if you confidently feel like, no, you can get yourself in a kind of point in life where you're able to cope better, or maybe there is like some fundamental shifts that can be made, like either way is totally like awesome. And I don't want
and valid, valid.
The crux of it is if you are not happy, or not feeling fulfilled, or not feeling comfortable, or not feeling like you love yourself, or not feeling, maybe even you just feel like something's not quite right, like you're okay, but like maybe I don't feel quite fulfilled, or like I'm doing the right thing with my life. Like, medication may not be the answer,
Yeah.
but you'll never know unless you go get therapy.
Mm-hmm.
That is it's the choice, I think, that if made more consistently will change the world.
Because you don't know what is best for you until you know all of your options.
And you just sit there and stew in it and like don't have anyone else to be like,
Yeah.
actually, I'm a professional and like you need to take a breath because it's not the end and like here, just chill out.
Yep, definitely. Well, this has been amazing.
Yeah,
I have just 100% enjoyed this. Our conversation.
I was actually thinking maybe we'll find some way to branch out and talk more about, like, because we have a lot of stuff to say. Like,
we certainly have to have you back again sometime.
I would love that.
Yeah.
About things like gender and sexuality and expression, like, because I started this because, well, we started this because we wanted there to be, more of a voice for people with like chronic illness out there. But there is, obviously so many voices that really need to be heard. So I think that, us like here and also at I should mention Savage Henry Comedy Club where we're recording this, who like supported us and making this so it can actually
so
be
thankful
a thing.
for them.
Yep, exactly
here on
that.
5th Street in Eureka. See, I'm finally doing my plugs and things.
And all of these things
like,
broadly overlap.
Yeah.
I mean, we're all connected. All these things, mental health and gender and expression and
They
comedy.
absolutely do.
It's all connected, man.
Yeah. So thank you again, Chyna.
Yeah, and before we close up here, I just wanted to give people a couple of resources.
Oh, yeah.
That was our next question. So perfect. Thank you.
Totally. If you go to psychologytoday.com, you can enter your zip code, and it will give you a list of therapists and psychologists and psychiatrists in your area, and many of whom accept socialized healthcare, which many
Pacific Partnership
many
is
people
probably what you have.
do have.
Might not. You might just know it as Medi-Cal, but if they say like partnership insurance, that is for the most part Medi-Cal. As far as my understanding,
Partnership is just the local.
Yeah, I think so.
Thing that manages Medi-Cal. So
But either way, you can filter it by type and find out which doctor and read a little blurb about them and find out maybe who would be a good match for you if you need somebody to talk to. The other thing that I do want to leave people with is the suicide prevention hotline number, which is 1-800-273-8255, and they have saved my life. And I highly encourage, if you don't have anybody to talk to or are feeling lost or confused or hurting, please call them.
And also, I don't know what the number, I don't know if it's the same number, but my friend just informed me that there is a suicide hotline that you can text and not just call, which was preferable for him because he has phone anxiety.
Absolutely.
So there's that as well.
It's easily findable on Google. And
awesome.
just you're not alone, and there's people out there. I would say everyone else you ever meet is going through some very similar stuff.
100%. Whether they say it or not, they are.
Yep.
You're not alone in your struggles. You're also not alone in getting the help you need.
Yep.
Like there are both. Yeah.
Can be done.
It absolutely can be done.
I really thank you for having me, you guys.
Thanks for coming.
So
this is really fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah, it was amazing to like just go and have this insight, and it's also kind of I'm finding it really interesting finally like hosting this thing and just seeing like how these conversations go and stuff. It's kind of
literally every time we record, I find another resource or another bit of information that helps me on my journey. Legitimate, like every single. I'm like,
human connection, man.
Yeah, totally.
It's the way.
Totally.
It's the way.
Yeah. If you want to hear more of our episodes, I've been spending a little bit of time this last week trying to actually put us out there more, getting more things. So
fancy.
You can follow us on Twitter now at IllestPod, ILLESTPOD.
I'm doing that right now.
Facebook.com/IllestPodcast. And if you go and want to make it so that us sick people over here
Sick,
have
poor
a little
individuals
bit of have a little bit more of
money.
that nice spending money because disability doesn't pay too well.
It certainly does not.
You can always support us on Patreon now at patreon.com/IllestPod. Patreon.com/IllestPod. This podcast should now be on iTunes under the Illest Podcast, as well as Spotify. Or if you go to any of those ones, I'm going to just be linking the hell out of it. Thanks
Absolutely.
everyone who has gone and like shown your support. I've like
Yay!
I've had like people who I like didn't even know, like sometimes like show up at like the club and stuff.
See, that's
and be
the real
like, wow,
MVP
like, you're
right
actually,
there.
You're
like,
doing
this
it.
is
I know
doing
the
really well.
totally.
And it's kind of super amazing and validating because this is kind of the most I've ever put myself out there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, thank
100%,
you
yeah.
everyone for listening and
Thanks, guys.
Yeah. Take care, I suppose. We didn't come up with an end.
You don't have an
thing.
outro?
No, we don't. I came up.
For
well, you know what I
shame.
do have though is this amazing outro music.
Hey.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah,
Take us
you're probably
away,
hearing
please.
it right
Thank you.
now.